turn that light off in the corner, please?
Okay, how do they go on? Thanks. Good stuff. Right, guys, buckle in. Strap yourselves up. We're going to the moon tonight. A couple of Saturn fives to take us there. I'm sure we'll all fit in.
Sure, take a nail.
Yeah. And that was one that I brought along. My daughter managed to assemble it for me yesterday, so otherwise I would have had a lot of foul language and spare parts left over. And then Jason sent me an email to say he had this lovely 6-foot high Saturn V stack, which is 3D printed, wasn't it? Yeah. So I said, yeah, bring along a bit of props, and afterwards people can have a close look and so on. So later on. But anyway, let's get moving. So 2019, a great year, a year to celebrate and commemorate the Apollo 11 moon landing. But you know what really, really bugs me? Media. What do they pump it out as the moon landing? Not one of the moon landings, not the first moon landing, but Apollo 11, the moon landing. No wonder there's confusion out there. So I thought tonight we'll do a pictorial overview of the Apollo moon missions from 68 to 72, with a bit of stuff before that, with the main idea to impart the principle that there was far, far more to the moon landings than Apollo 11. So let's move ahead. So July 21st, New Zealand time, 1969. Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin descended down to the lunar surface to become the first guys on the moon, while their colleague Mike Collins remained in orbit. So who here recalls all that happening? You know, most people off the age, absolutely. Everyone sticks their hand up, absolutely. You know, and it was done with a lot of fanfare and hype and stuff, quite rightly so, as it deservedly so. First men to land on the moon. Pretty special. But what the media often just failed to mention, there were 28 missions that preceded Apollo 11 to make it happen. It almost to give the idea of, hey, let's go to the moon. All right, you guys build a rocket, put it up there, Apollo 11 goes up and lands, and that's the end of it. But they forget 28 missions preceded it. We'll talk a little bit about those. After the Apollo 11, there were 5 further successful landings on the moon. Yeah, who could tell me 3 or 4 facts about every one of those missions? No, because they get forgotten. Yeah, I'm sure you can keep it. Yeah, absolutely. But the point being is that they're often forgotten about. And one of the other things I want to show you tonight, these 5 missions that followed 11 were scientifically wise and technology wise far more superior, far more exciting than Apollo 11 could have ever dreamt of. You ask a media person about them. So, furthermore, from 1968 to 72, NASA sent to the moon 9 manned missions, not just Apollo 11. Total of 24 astronauts, 3 of which who travelled to the moon twice. There was 6 successful manned landings, and 12 of those 24 men got to walk on the surface of the moon. I bet you won't hear that on these media coverage. Here's my point again, there's much more to the moon landing than Apollo 11. So, to impart this principle, there's 5 frequently asked questions that I'm going to address. What were the flights preceding the moon missions? What 2 manned missions were only into lunar orbit, went to the moon but didn't descend to the surface? What were the 6 missions that did land successfully? What was the science that was carried out on the moon? And what do the landing sites look like today? So let's get going and have a look into this. So part 1, the long forgotten projects and flights prior to the moon missions, namely Project Mercury, Gemini, and Apollos 1, 7, and 9. So Project Mercury was 6 missions. As you can see, just a single man in a cramped, very, very small cramped capsule. And the point of Project Mercury was just to show that yes, you could get a man into space, He could survive in space and he could function in space. That was the sole purpose of it all, and to make sure they can do some full orbital flights. There were 6 of those missions. That went from 58 to 63. I put this in. Hey, new members in the last 3-4 years? Any new members in the last 3 new ones? Yeah. Okay, guys, this is for you. There's some prizes coming up, so I'll give you guys first. Go ahead. Who was the first American in space? Yeah, who said that? Yeah. Alan B. Shepard. Good one. Yep. Who out of you guys, just the new members quiz, and then I'll open that later on, but the new members quiz. Who was the first American to complete a full orbit of the Earth? Okay, have any newbies? Any takers? Okay, yeah.
John Glenn?
Yeah, absolutely, John Glenn, there you go. Yep. Crunchy bars, straight from the moon. And that's them there. Alan B. Shepard, who also, as you'll find out, he went to the moon as well. He got, after his first suborbit flight, got deemed unfit through many years' disease. It's an inner ear disorder. So he got in charge of the astronauts' office, picking who was going to do what flights. He had some surgery to get it fixed, and guess who he picked to be the commander of Apollo 14 himself. John Glenn, that's in there. He got to fly a second time in the space shuttle when he aged about 77 years of age. So there's hope for us yet. We might still get into space. us young men. Okay, then was Project Gemini, as the name implies, with 2-man, 12 missions, 2-man capsules. And that's main objective was to test the hardware, test the skills and the experience. They knew what they had to do to get to the moon. They knew they had to do rendezvous, bringing 2 spacecraft together in space. Sounds easy? It's not. They had to dock 2 spacecraft. Sounds easy? It's not. Spacewalking, the same. A lot of skills and hardware had to be produced, and that was the purpose of Project Gemini. So essential space experience and training for the moon missions. Now this is open to anyone. Anyone can name this mission? You should be able to name this mission. It's what? Someone said that? No. Gemini what? 1 to 12.
1.
All right, okay, Jonathan, for trying. Good on you, mate. Okay, it's Gemini 8. Okay, so I told you it's Gemini. I just love this picture. I've got a big blowing up picture of this on the wall at home. I just love this picture. Magnificent. So knowing that it's Gemini 8 who did the first docking, then they had to eject and make an emergency landing. There's a clue for you. So who would these be? Who are these guys? Who's this guy here?
Neil Armstrong.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong. Yeah, absolutely. Is that you down there? Incoming Pritchie Bar. Whoop. Okay, in which case, Gemini 8, Neil Young is commander, so who was the pilot?
John Young.
No.
You said Neil Young was the...
Sorry, Neil Young. Yeah, Neil Young, I was the guitar. Yeah. Neil Armstrong. Sorry, who was the guy in here? Oh, I'll take that. Okay, Dave Scott. Right, that's good. That's Dave Scott. Sorry, that was okay. So you'll see him later on. Okay, so then came the Apollo missions. Capsules, the Apollo 11 capsule that's in the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. It was a 3-man capsule designed to go to the moon. They had one of those at Huntsville, Alabama, a full model. You could hop inside it and just without bulky suits, just your normal clothes. Trust me, it's not roomy in there. It was a very, very tight fit. That's just 3 people just in normal clothes. There was nothing glamorous about going to the moon. So there was these missions here. The Apollo 1, sadly 3 astronauts got killed in a flash fire in the capsule on the pad, which I'll address very, very shortly. They realised they had some big problems to sort out, so Apollo 2 to 6 were unmanned. Then Apollo 7 went into Earth orbit, testing the command module capsule, just a bit of a shakedown cruise, which was very successful. And then Apollo 9 had the Lunar Module in Earth orbit, just a shakedown cruise for the Lunar Module.
Chris?
Yeah.
Were there Apollos 2 and 3, didn't it jump to 4?
They were unmanned. I think, I don't actually know if they flew, but they did have the hardware for them.
What about number 8?
Number 8, we come to 8, yeah, so there's a bit of history behind 8, which we'll come to, but it's flew to the moon.
How big are these astronauts, like mass? 70 kg or 80?
Oh yeah, they were pretty slim guys, they were all relatively short. Hey, have a seat, mate. Yeah, they were all relatively short in these days in particular. They were about, I think the maximum height was about 5'10", something like that was the maximum height. So they weren't big. They probably didn't have big beer bellies, not so much either, perhaps, which I found it difficult to get in there, but they were pretty slim guys. So I put this slide in here, I did this afternoon actually, just to, to pay respect to the fallen heroes. These were the guys in Apollo 1 who lost their lives in the journey to the moon. Gus Grimson, the second American in space. Edward White, the second, who was the first American to walk in space, and the rookie Roger Chaffee. And I put that up to not only pay respect for them, but when some ignorant fool comes out with just stupid statements like, I don't think they went to the moon, I feel like saying to them, you go and say that to the face of the relatives of these guys who lost their lives. You go and do that and see how big and smart you are then, kiddo. So that's why I put that up there, just in recognition of these three guys. Don't get me started.
Will they supposed to land on the moon or?
No, they were just testing out the capsule. They would have just gone and done some of their orbits in the new capsule. Or testing out the capsule. So moving on to part 2, the lunar orbit missions, Apollo 8 and 10. And as one gentleman's already pointed out, well, a little bit things were a bit out of order. Apollo 7, they tested the command module, and there was a shakedown cruise that all went well. Apollo 8 was due to check the lunar module out, but it wasn't ready yet. It was still behind in its development. But they'd already had the command module ready to go. They had the navigation system. It was all set to go, and they said, hey, look, why don't we just swap these two missions around? So they phoned up Frank Borman. It's a lovely documentary, and he remembers receiving the phone call. At the same time, the CIA with their satellites had spotted huge big N1 rocket sitting on the launch pad in Russia. And they said, the Russians are going to launch to the moon any time soon, guys. Here we are playing around because our lunar module's not ready, but we've got all our navigation gear. It needs testing. Let's go now. So they went. So that was over Christmas 1968. The first mission to leave Earth orbit. That was a very, very bold mission. They did 10 lunar orbits testing the navigation system. And I put in here Jim Lovell flew twice to the moon, Apollo 8 and Apollo 13. And they took this very iconic picture that was made a huge pack on humanity and society in general, when people realised that this was the first time ever people looked back, right, just at our planet and realised just how precious and fragile Earth is. So it's become a very important iconic image. I actually have that on my business card. It represents science, astronomy, and it represents humanity. It just represents a lot. So then was Apollo 10. So Apollo 8 proved they could get to the moon, the navigation's good. Apollo 9, okay, the lunar module's ready now. They did that in Earth orbit. Then Apollo 10 did the full dress rehearsal. Took the command module and the lunar module into the lunar orbit, descended to 15 kilometres from the surface. That would have been frustrating, wouldn't it? So they had to test. It's a whole different story orbiting the moon. Totally different story, different orbital mechanics going on, different gravitational fields and so on. So that was a very important mission. Even if they wanted to land, they couldn't have. The lunar module wasn't fully developed, it was too heavy. It couldn't have gone down and come back up again. And that illustrates the point, the whole process was in constant development. Every mission built on the previous mission. They learned from their mistakes, the hardware was getting developed all the time. So let's move on to the landing missions. Apollos 11 to 17, and I'll just put a little bit about some human factor in there. So here we go. Apollo 11, as we know, was launched in '69. Armstrong, Aldrin and Collins first. Their main mission was really just to be the first just to man and get home again. That was the key point of this. Not fluff around and do too much there. Just prove that, yep, we can get there and we can get back home safely again. Now, I want you to remember these figures. These are some baseline figures. They did one moonwalk, which lasted roughly 2.5 hours. and they returned samples, 21.6 kilograms. So just remember, 1 2.5 hour moonwalk, roughly 21 kilograms of samples. Just keep that up here. So we use it as the baseline how the other missions progressed. I've got some cool pictures here as well. This is the Lunar Module that they used. The whole unit comes down. Astronauts reside in here, the ascent stage. The descent stage is where all the equipment is, and of course that acts as a launching pad for the ascent stage to lift off. It allowed 3 days stay on the moon for the further missions. And here's just an image inside. It was pretty small and cramped. There's the windows we look through, and that's, you can see the controls here, the commanders here, the Lunar Module pilots here. There's no seats, they stand. Makes sense, they don't want excess weight. And that's the hatch, you see them go out. That's what the Lunar Module would have looked like, just above the surface, just before touchdown. And you can see these probes that go down on 3 of the landing legs. 6-foot probes going down on 3 of them. Those probes have little sensors on the end of them. And as soon as they touch the lunar surface, a little light goes on in the commander's control. It says contact light. And he automatically hits the button, shuts the engines off, and they free fall the last few feet. Why? They don't want rocks and dust and stuff blasting up to their engine valves. So they switch it off. There was a competition, which I'll go through shortly, about who had the sharpest reflexes. As soon as that contact light hits, who was the quickest to hit the button and fall the greatest distance. Neil was actually the slowest, understandably so. They had the softest landing. And yeah, here's just some nice pictures I put up here just to enjoy on the big screen. So that's a nice sort of panoramic view of the Sea of Tranquility, which you don't very often see. You often see little sort of shots of here, here, or here. That's a nice panoramic view, just to enjoy it, no other reason. Some iconic pictures of Buzz. Everyone knows this image. Taken by Neil, and that's Buzz Aldrin working on some of the Apollo equipment, the science equipment. I put this one, everyone knows this one, but this isn't higher definition. What do you see here? See, he's looking out. You always think the visor is pointing that way, he must be looking that way. But this is almost, the spacesuit's almost like a little miniature spacecraft. They're not hugging, looking like this. They can move around. So he's looking out at the camera. So can you see his face there? Buzzing up his face? Yeah. So I purposely searched the internet today to get that picture in high definition and then blew it right up just to illustrate that point. There's actually a little bit of mobility in there, and he's actually turning around facing the camera.
What are the process on the photo?
Oh, okay. That's part of it on the photography for them, I think, for measuring up, for lining up pictures and distances and so on. That's just off the Hasselblad characters did that. This one here is one of the very few pictures of Neil Armstrong working on the side of the Lunar Module because he had the camera. He only gave it to Buzz for a brief moment of time, and Buzz took 1 or 2 pictures off Neil. So it's a bit of a shame, but that's one of the very, very few pictures of Neil Armstrong on the moon. You can see the solar wind experiment, the flag, and I just blew that one up too. A bit blurry, but just to give you a close-up picture. So that's your man, Neil Armstrong on the moon, one of the very, very few pictures.
It's a bit like there's no photo of Sir Edmund Hillary on the top of Everest.
Yeah.
He was the one who had a photos.
Yeah.
So all the photos are nothing.
There's all sorts of speculation why there weren't any pictures of Neil on the moon. Was it jealousy or whatever? Who knows? But that's just the way it is. So this is a cool picture which I also dug up today, and I knew it up and dug up. That's Neil. He's just come down the ladder. He's just taken what they call the contingency sample. If they have to leave the moon very quickly, at least they've got a little bit of sample in there. But look at his visor. Normally, all those pictures you see the gold visor open. You don't see their faces. But here's Neil Armstrong's face in clear view on the moon. The gold visors protect them against the severe ultraviolet light that's blazing down on them that we take for granted our atmosphere absorbs. So that's quite a cool picture. That's Neil Armstrong. You can see the visors up and you can see his full face.
He's got fun in the space there. Would he have to jump pretty quick after that?
I didn't exactly. It's probably a little bit away.
Reflection.
Yeah. This is a picture, you don't often see that often too. This is them after the moonwalk. They just come in for the moonwalk, taking the gear off, and looks pretty exhausted but pretty happy. Yep, all you see is the glossy pictures. So I purposely make a point of digging up some of the more interesting pictures just to show up on the big screen.
Well, one thing they pointed out on a program over the weekend that the astronauts couldn't don their spacesuit by themselves, so they had to help each other get their spacesuit on and off.
Absolutely, yeah. And they were pretty cramped in there. They did not sleep very well. It was very cramped. I think Neil slept on the engine valve. Buzz slept on the floor. They were all excited. They were uncomfortable. They had to remain in their spacesuits. You know, those thick, their neck sleeves around here just dug into their skin and stuff. They had all the moon grime and dirt grinding into their skin. There was little motors and fans going all the time. It was noisy. It was cold. It was uncomfortable. It was cramped. They did not sleep very, very well. The following one, Apollo 12, had little hammocks. They slept in hammocks. And they started taking some sleeping tablets too. So this is the Lunar Module. This is picture taken Apollo 17, but I thought I'd put it in here to show you the ascent stage taking off, leaving the descent stage behind as their launch pad. And this is Apollo 11 coming on up, the Eagle. The ascent stage just coming up to join Mike Collins in the Command and Service Module, just before the Lunar Orbital docking. It's a pretty iconic picture too. So moving on to Apollo 12, which you don't hear anything about. No, it just didn't get covered that well. It was only only launched in November, a few months later. Pete Conrad, Dick Gordon, and Apeninne were the three astronauts. They launched in a rainstorm. And you might think, oh, why don't they just wait till the storm passes? They had a very narrow window which they wanted to be launched in. Their objective was a precision landing, not just to prove they can get to the moon and land somewhere, but Surveyor 3, they used that as a line in the sand, so to speak. It was an unmanned survey craft that was sent up a couple of years prior. And their objective, Apollo 12's objective was, we want to show that not only you get to the moon, but you're going to land right there on the moon. Precision landing. So they had a narrow window, so they decided, look, let's just launch. Yeah, right.
Did they have titles when they went to the moon?
Did they have what, sorry?
Titles like Commander or Sergeant or...
Yes, they did use Commander,
Yeah.
Command Module Pilot, and Lunar Module Pilot.
Okay.
Yeah. So Nick Neal, for example, was the Commander. He was always, flew to the moon with the Lunar Module Pilot. The Commander actually flew. The Lunar Module Pilot didn't do a lot of flying, unless his Commander sort of let him at the wheel, so to speak. But it's just nice to have a
And well, what did Mr. Bean do?
Mr. Bean. Mr. Bean, he was the Lunar Module Pilot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic.
And Dick Gordon stayed in the Command Module, and Pete Conrad was the Commander.
Thank you.
And Pete Conrad did let Apeninne, on the ascent part of it, take the wheel for a while. But he didn't have to. It was just out of his good nature.
These guys all had military ranks as well, because up to this point they were all military personnel.
Neil Armstrong was the only civilian out of all these guys. All the rest were military guys, Navy, Air Force, and so on. So these guys launched into this rainstorm. And what do you got? You've got this huge, big, long metal tube going into this storm, and you've got an ionised plume of ionised gas going straight down to the Earth. It was just a lightning strike waiting to happen. They got struck by lightning, and it just blew all their controls out. Just all the controls went absolutely haywire. A lesser commander probably would have pulled the abort button and just aborted. Oh my God, this is going terribly wrong. Pete Conrad kept his cool. This is one of the first instances when someone decided, what should we do? Let's just reboot. He switched everything off, switched it back on, everything came up. Well, we're still heading to the moon, let's keep going.
John Arrow, John Arrow, who's the head cop who did the SCE talks.
Yes.
Which reset it. It was only Bean who knew where that switch was.
Right. Yeah.
You did something else.
So, how many people say, they were saying lightning never strikes twice. It did what happened again, they got struck a second time. Same thing happened again, they kept going. So that was their objective, which I'll come nice picture of that shortly. Remember, Apollo 11 was 1 moonwalk, 2.5 hours. These guys did 2 moonwalks, almost 8 hours, 7 3/4 hours moonwalking. You immediately notice a big jump. Apollo 11 brought home 21 kilograms. These guys 34.3. Once again, 50% more rock for bringing home. So automatically the ante's just going up the whole time. Far more exciting than Apollo 11. That's the Surveyor spacecraft. You can see they're only about 200 or 300 metres away from it. So we can visit it. They took some samples from it, some bits and pieces off it, took back to Earth, they actually grew a bacteria, Streptococcus bacteria on it. The question was it a contamination or did bacteria survive in the vacuum of space? You know, for 2 odd years. The general consensus when they look objectively now at the whole procedure that was probably a contamination. It's still nevertheless interesting, but look at what a good job they did of landing, a nice pinpoint landing. Albion became a famous artist, and he took to doing paintings. And that's how he, pretty much the rest of his career was taking painting. Here's just some of his paintings that he did. Very unique. He's the only person really who was qualified to do that. So Apollo 13, of course, they didn't land on the moon, but they're worth mentioning. Jim Lovell, of course, he was in Apollo 8, so the second time there. Jack Spigot's, I think that's Jack Spigot there, isn't it? And Fred Hayes there. So they, of course, everyone knows the story here. Halfway to the moon, their oxygen tank in the surface module exploded, which means the landing had to be aborted. I won't go into too much detail there, but just for those who are superstitious, Apollo 11 was launched on the 13th minute of the 13th hour, and it was on April 13th the oxygen tank exploded. Ooh, check that out. So that's rotten luck, isn't it? So we move on. So Apollo 14, and here's Alan B. Shepard, first American space, who assigned himself as commander for the Apollo 14. He went down to the with Ed Mitchell, that's the Russo, that's Ed Mitchell there. These two went down to the moon, and Stu Russo stayed in orbit. Their objective was to land where Apollo 13 was meant to land, in the Frau Moro Formation. Big crater here, huge big crater. Why go and visit a crater? When you go to the surface, what do you want to do? You want to get some of the stuff from deep below. You have to start drilling. Well, you don't have to take all that gear up to the moon. Nature's already done it for you. Craters like this are just big natural drill holes. So they went right up to the edge of the crater as far as they could and got a lot of samples. 2 moonwalks, 9 hours, 21 minutes. See, the ante's gone up already from a 2.5-hour moonwalk to 9 hours, 21 minutes total. They were on the moon a total of 36 hours. This is where they landed. Here, there's 11, Sea Tranquility, 12, the ocean storms, and you're talking here Apollo 14. It was known as the walking tour trip. They did a lot of walking. They walked, which I've got another picture for you. That was quite some trek. They did quite a large trek there, walking all that distance. That was a total incline of 100-metre incline. It also shows, you might say, why didn't they get right up close? They couldn't tell how far away the crater was. We take it for granted. You can judge distances on Earth by trees and buildings and so on. Plus the atmosphere gets hazier and thicker the more you look away. You've got none of that going on Earth. You've got on the moon, but no clues. You've got no atmosphere. So they had absolutely no idea. And in the end, they were just exhausted and said, this is as far as we can go. And it was only later that they found they were so close to it. So they had this cart they took with them. And the other thing to mention in here, so Alan B. Shepard was the oldest man on the moon at 48 years. So who was the youngest person on the moon? Who walked on the moon? For a crunchy butt. You don't get that, Chris? Jason, Apollo 16?
Charlie Duke.
Just briefly, someone grab it. Oh, there you go.
Charlie Duke.
It was Charlie Duke. Yeah, wow, yeah, good man. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Good guess.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good stuff. Yeah, so that gives you an idea of the age. So what I've told you is there's a 12-year age difference. So Alan B. Shepard was 48, Charlie Duke, Apollo 16 was 36. Most of them were about 38, 39 years of age, all roughly born 1930 or thereabouts. Alan B. Shepard was a keen avid golfer, and so he took a 6-iron head up to the moon and attached it to the handle of the lunar scoop handle, and drove a couple of balls. And that's just obviously an artist's impression of what it would have been like. No one knows how far the balls went, but according to him, they went for miles and miles and miles. What can you say? They say that the reason they needed a big Saturn V rocket to go to the moon was to get 3 large egos off the launch pad.
Chris, you mentioned that he wasn't allowed to go back after the Mercury mission.
Correct.
Did he get better or did
He-
the criteria change?
There was a new surgical technique got developed for Meniere's disease to put a small tube in and take the pressure off the inner ear. It was still considered experimental. He volunteered, says, look, I've got nothing to lose. I desperately want to get up there, and in my current state, they won't let me up, quite rightly so. So he put himself forward with this new surgical technique, and it was successful. Yep. So Apollo 14, yeah, so here we go. So here they are going for a huge long walk. The use of a cart, they returned 42.8 samples. So immediately twice the amount of material that Apollo 11 brought back. That's where they walked. So they walked an incline of 100 metres. Quite a few kilometres. That's a lot of walking in those suits under those conditions. So Apollo 15, in July 1971, David Scott, so he was the guy of Apollo 8 with Neil Armstrong, not Neil Armstrong, and Jim Irwin was the Lunar Module pilot, and Al Warden, Command Module pilot. Their objective, never mind going to the sort of the more flat, sort of safer bits, they thought, why don't we go into the highlands, the older part of the moon? We're more advanced now, let's give it a go, and that's indeed where they went. They stayed 3 days on the moon. They did 3 moonwalks. Look at this, getting up to 18.5 hours of moonwalks compared with 2.5 hours for Apollo 11, which the media still can't get over. They're still flapping about 2.5 hours. With who? But these guys are 18 hours.
How much of that moonwalk would include driving the buggy?
Quite a bit, and these guys were the first to...
So it wasn't all walking, it's 18 hours, someone's driving.
Oh yeah, look, and just digging and drilling and doing bits and pieces and stuff, absolutely. Look at the 77 kilograms of samples coming back now. You can see the antes just going up and up and up with each mission.
To do this, Chris, you had to have more rocket fuel to lift off the moon, more for the descent stage.
Yep.
Saturn V was also souped up to actually hoist the whole lot into orbit.
And that illustrates the whole point. Each mission, the hardware even was just kept building on the previous experience. It was like America's Cup, you know, they don't just go out there with one boat and go, they're developing it all along. It's the same principle here throughout the whole program. They're constantly developing the Saturn V rocket, or developing the Lunar Module, and here these guys landed right up in here, way up in the Apeninne Highlands. So, here is the Lunar Module sitting precariously on a 10-degree tilt.